What if I told you that every major modern war the United States has fought didn't start with freedom, or democracy, or even national security? What if the real trigger was the value of the US dollar? Because there's a pattern hidden in plain sight. When pressure builds on the dollar's global dominance, war follows. Vietnam, currency panic. Iraq, threats against the Libya, gold-backed currency proposal. Afghanistan, foothold between China, Iran, and energy routes. Coincidence or strategy? Today we're pulling apart a narrative that challenges everything you've been told, because this story isn't about politics, it's about economics. It's about a global financial system built like a fortress around the US dollar, and what happens when that fortress begins to crack. Stay to the end. By the time we're finished, the next headline you see might feel less like news and more like a prediction. To understand why the dollar matters so much, we have to go back to a time before America was a superpower, before global dominance, before the Pentagon, before Wall Street ruled the world. The year is 1944. The world is on fire. World War II is nearing its end. 44 nations gather in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to answer one question: how do we rebuild the world economy? And the answer becomes the foundation of American power, the Bretton Woods system. Now, the dollar isn't just currency, it becomes the backbone of the global financial system. Foreign exchange, pegged to the dollar. Global trade, settled in dollars. Oil, dollars. International loans, dollars. This wasn't an accident, it was architecture. A system designed to make the world's prosperity depend on America's currency. But every system has a weakness, and Bretton Woods had one fatal flaw: gold. The dollar was promised to be as good as gold, literally at a fixed exchange rate, $35 per ounce. This made the dollar trusted, predictable, dominant. But it also created a ticking time bomb, because if the US ever printed more dollars than it had gold to back it, the entire system would collapse. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened. Jump to the 1960s. America is spending money like water. The Cold War, the space race, and conflict that bleeds money by the hour. Vietnam. The US prints dollars to fund the war, and the world watches the gold reserves shrink. Countries start asking questions. European leaders demand gold in exchange for dollars, and one by one, ships leave New York full of gold bars. By 1971, the US is trapped. If it keeps exchanging dollars for gold, it goes bankrupt. If it refuses, the system collapses. President Richard Nixon chooses the collapse. August 15, 1971. The gold window closes. The world's financial foundation is shattered. The dollar is no longer backed by gold. It's backed by nothing, except us power. But nothing is not enough to control the world's currency. So a new system must be created. Enter the petrodollar system. A deal is struck between the US and Saudi Arabia in the mid-1970s. Oil, the lifeblood of every economy, will only be sold in US dollars. Every country needs oil. To buy oil, they need dollars. To get dollars, they must participate in the American financial system. And just like that, the dollar's dominance is reborn, not backed by gold, but by oil, military protection, and geopolitical leverage. A new formula of power is created. Dollar demand equals global dependency equals strategic control. The message to the world is simple: trade in dollars, or get left out of the global economy. But here's the dark side. If a country challenges the system, if they threaten the dollar's dominance, there's more than money at stake. There's national survival at stake. This is where the pattern begins, where foreign policy goals and dollar defense become indistinguishable. It starts with Iraq. IRAQ-2000, Saddam Hussein announces Iraq will sell oil in euros, not dollars, a small change, but symbolically catastrophic. If one oil nation breaks the rule, others might follow. The petrodollar system depends on obedience. 3 years later, the US invades. Weapons of mass destruction were never found, but Iraq's oil returned to dollar pricing. Cause and effect. Or coincidence? We're not here to claim conspiracy, but we are here to acknowledge patterns. And Iraq isn't alone. Libya 2011, Muammar Gaddafi proposes a gold-backed African dinar, a currency intended to challenge the dollar and euro in African trade. Months later, Intervention, NATO forces, regime change. Gaddafi is killed, the gold-backed currency dies with him. Cause and effect, or coincidence. Again, patterns. IRAN 2000s present. Iran tries to bypass the dollar using alternative payment systems and bartering agreements. What follows? Sanctions, international isolation, threats of military action. A currency decision becomes a national crisis. Russia and China, both nations, begin reducing dollar reserves, building gold stockpiles, and trading energy outside the dollar. And suddenly global tension skyrockets. Again, no claims, just connections, patterns. Today, those patterns are accelerating. Nations around the world are building systems designed to bypass the dollar. The BRICS currency talks, the rise of digital yuan pilot programs, record gold purchases by central banks, countries signing non-dollar oil contracts, currency swap deals between major economies. This doesn't mean a war will happen, but it does mean the financial logic hasn't changed. If the dollar falls, American power falls. If American power falls, the global balance changes. Which raises the biggest question so far. Can the US survive a future where war is no longer enough to protect the dollar? Because the world is changing. Oil is losing its monopoly. Digital currencies are emerging. Alliances are shifting. And for the first time in 80 years, the US can't force dollar demand the way it used to, not without consequences. Let's break down the mechanics, the engine that makes the pattern logical. Reason 1. War requires dollars, military contracts, oil supply chains, loan programs, all dollar deals. Conflict forces countries to use dollars to interact with America. Reason 2. War reinforces dependence. Allies need weapons. Weapons are bought in dollars. Allies need energy. Energy is priced in dollars. Dependence is power. Reason 3. War protects energy routes, control the shipping lanes, control the currency. Oil flows through US protected waters. No protection. No Petrodollar. Reason 4. War creates safe haven panic when the world is scared. Investors flee to dollars. A crisis anywhere becomes strength for the dollar everywhere. This is not a moral judgment. It's a structural reality. But there's a problem. This model depends on perpetual intervention. To maintain dominance, the US must constantly defend oil routes, trade networks, financial markets, currency credibility. This means endless commitments, endless spending, endless pressure. Debt skyrockets, inflation builds, economic inequality rises. The system that once made America rich now makes it fragile. And fragility invites challenge. If the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, the consequences would be immediate and severe. Higher interest rates, more expensive imports, declining military reach, a shrinking safety net, geopolitical influence, collapse without the dollar's ability to export inflation and draw global capital. The US becomes just another nation. A powerful nation, yes, but not the center of gravity, not the sun. And history shows when an empire loses its currency dominance, decline follows. Spain, Britain, the Netherlands, France, currency, then collapse. Not always overnight, but inevitable. So let's connect this to today with repeating signals and uncomfortable parallels. Nations ditching the dollar for trade deals. New banking systems outside SWIFT, central banks shifting to gold, oil contracts and local currencies. Military tensions near energy corridors individually. These events are normal. Together they form a pattern. And patterns tell stories. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. 3 key takeaways. Narrator. So what can we take from all of this? Takeaway number 1. The dollar is not just money, it is us. Power, military, economic, and political influence all depend on it. Takeaway number 2. When the dollar is threatened, global conflict risk rises, not because of conspiracy, but because of structure. Takeaway number 3. The world is slowly building alternatives, and whether they succeed, will shape the next century. We are entering a new era, a world where defending the dollar might become harder than ever. Maybe future conflicts will be digital, maybe economic, maybe ideological. But one reality remains. If the dollar falls, the world changes, and so does America. The question isn't whether the US will go to war when the dollar is in danger. The real question is, what happens when war is no longer enough? If this breakdown opened your eyes, if it helped you see the patterns behind the headlines, then we need to talk more about this. Hit that subscribe button. Comment your thoughts. Do you think the dollar will remain dominant, or is the age of American currency coming to an end? Share this video because this discussion matters, not for politics, not for ideology, but for understanding the world we live in. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.